So I'm heading into Chicago right now, and I was thinking about films and how people react to films. So you do a film on gang activity, and then you release that film into markets that have heavy gang activity. And I'll put it on Tumblr, some of the research. But you take films like Colors, and you release it in Los Angeles. And who shows up for that? You release it into markets, and in those markets, there's lots of gangbangers. And so what happens? They go to the film. And because it's about gang violence, inter-gang violence, violence between gangs, what happens? Before the film, after the film, inside the theaters, you get gang violence. And then you release Boys in the Hood, the same thing. And you release it into the markets where there's heavy gang presence. And what happens? You get heavy gang violence. So it amplifies. It's like an anthem to gang activity. So if you watch it, serial killers, serial rapists, serial criminals, hitmen, truly, when they watch those movies, it glorifies them and it feeds into their, feelings. It amplifies them. It boosts them. So the movie isn't making them that. The movie is amplifying who they are. And so it does two things. But if you make, like Top Gun, naval aviators, pilots, military pilots, but in particular naval aviators, they love Top Gun. They're like, yeah, that's awesome. And it glorifies them in what they do. And so it's like the movie about American Sniper. And it talks about, the Marines and Navy SEALs, because the SEAL is with the Marines and it's part of the Navy. So it's a special forces. The Marines are the ground troops for the Navy. And with that, they have a special forces called Navy SEALs. So you get Marines, and then with the Marines, you get an embedded group of SEALs. And this Navy SEAL, he does sniper cover for the Marines. They're specialized training that's beyond what the Marines normally get. And so he does cover for them. He spots things. He's a spotter and a sniper. Number one duty is being a spotter, informing them of what's going on the ground. So you think he's just up there to shoot people. Not really. His number one job with him and his partner, who basically controls wind and temperature and does all the kind of calculations so he can set the gun right, and works with him in spotting. The sniper's looking through the scope of the gun, but his counterpart has binoculars, and they're looking through it, and the binoculars could have range finders. But they're both spotters, and they're giving the troops on the ground, when they move, information of what's going on around them. That's what I talked about yesterday about helicopters in the city of Chicago. Command and controlled from the helicopter. That the captain, or that is up in the helicopter, and he's controlling the ground troops. As they move around and do the grid search, they can see everything going on, and they can position their vehicles They're foot cops, they're bike cops, they're patrolled car vehicle patrols, and they can maneuver them around in areas to check out certain things. So you have a live command and controlled situation. And yes, if something happens, they're also spotting for them. So they're not going in blind. And so the foot patrol can't get ambushed. So you see it in American Sniper talking about, you have this here and that as the foot patrol moves in, keeping them from getting ambushed. Well, that's what they do with the helicopter and police. But what the movie does is amplify. So Daytona, the Tom Cruise movie, racing car drivers love that movie. It amplifies what they do. It makes them out to be the awesome guy. And they feel really good about themselves and their profession and so on. But they have to understand this when they release movies. What is going on? And so you can't release movies that ignite the flames. And they shouldn't have released Colors into those markets. They should have avoided those markets that have heavy gang presence. This way, they don't ignite the flames between gangs, between Crips and Bloods and others. You move away from those high tension areas. You don't release something like in Iran, an American film where, Americans are doing something that Iranians would consider negative when tensions are high. When tensions are low, you can release those films and it's more thoughtful and provoking than a call to jihad. But if tensions are high and you release it in Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq with ISIS and so on, Taliban, the Al-Qaeda and that, well, those movies are a cry for jihad. So the Jodie Foster movie, it was here in America, and there was a lot of, tension overseas and everything. And in the opening of the movie, which I walked out of, was that her husband, who was Arab, was jogging in New York and gets mugged and killed in a tunnel. He's jogging under an underpass, I think it is, and he gets mugged and killed. And I walked out of the movie. I'm like, you got to be kidding with what's going on. You release this movie now that you show an Arab getting killed by white people in America. Not the proper timing. So that's what we talk about inciting. And so they use these pieces as a calling for jihad. Even if it's not true, they use the mindset and it motivates their people as they watch the movie, and this great innocent Muslim is married to this woman, and then he goes out for a run. And as he's going out for the run, he gets jumped by these white people and murdered. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I got up and just left the movie theater. Not the right time. See, trending can be a very bad thing. And movies can stir feelings and bring out very bad things in people. So that's what I talk about rap music. And who was with me? Queen Latifah. And she was talking about, the single motherhood and tapping that booty. Really tapping that, the OPP, other people's pussy, like Pussycat, like Puss in Boots in the, movie. So, but it's talking about cheating and adultery. And it's talking about how a black man sleeping with other people's women is like the shit. OPP, you know me. Igniting that feeling of adultery. And then you watch Maury Povich and Jerry Springer. And they glorify these people in these negative actions. So it stokes the fire. They feel more manly. It incentivizes them. Maybe I'll end up on Jerry Springer if I cheat on my girl. And we'll be on Springer. And we can be famous. So I'm going to commit an act of betrayal. And I can get on these shows. So people do those things as motivated. Now, Jackass motivated people to try what they're doing. That's why they say, do not try these things. These are done by professional stunt people. And they put the disclaimer in there. Well, Jackass got sued in the first one with the grill thing, if I remember correctly. And some young kid tried to do the stunt, and he ended up with third-degree burns on his skin. Because, this is parental guidance. You have to understand the aptitude of your child. Monkey see, monkey do. So you have to understand the aptitude of your child. And I've always said this. You can see Wild Coyote and everything else and not do it because you understand these are cartoon characters. They blow up, they come back. It's not reality. But also, I can understand, like Popeye, and he says, I've had enough, and I can't take it anymore. And then he eats his spinach, and it gives him the power of the big fist, and he, boom. But understanding that, it is communicating a point to people. And I love Popeye and Olive Oyl and everything, and I loved the movie when they did the movie, and I went and saw it. When they brought it to life, and they had, it was good. And it showed you that taking a cartoon and turning it into a real movie can work. And so the Popeye movie was highly successful. But the whole point is, we're talking about getting picked on. Like Columbine. When society doesn't police itself correct, and you have people continuously doing these negative acts and getting away with them, like you've done to me for 10 years, unbelievable, extreme tailgating, and then you've hit me numerous times. You've slammed into me on the highway. A Hispanic guy, when I walked up to see if he's okay, he reeked of alcohol. But they didn't give him a breathalyzer. But if I can smell all the alcohol on his breath, and he fucking reeked. But they did nothing. And what do you feel? You feel great injustice. As you sit out here and this person violated you, and then you're somebody who have been cited for a ticket for drunken driving, and you're somebody that had to go to jail, and here's somebody who's hit somebody who could have killed people, and he just walks. And he hits you at 70 miles an hour. And he just walks. Do you feel good about Hispanic people? If you're an opposite race, no, not at all. But you think, oh, it's just racism. Really? I grew up with my roommate, Eric. He's half Hispanic. His father was white. And all the gang activity in Los Angeles, the cholos and that, he hated them. And he talked about how horrible they are to their race, and it makes Hispanic people look like shit. And just like I can give you several others. Like Jen, she hated what Asian people did. So what Asian people did and what Korean people did in particular as well. Her ethnicity within the Asian. But she hated the negativity that Asian people brought. She hated it. And the funny thing is, I never told her, but I grew up watching, all the race riots and everything going on and police brutality and all these white people doing bad things like Emmett Till and everything else. And I hate white trash. And I do mean I hate. They make me look like a piece of shit. They're representing it. I didn't choose them. And they didn't choose a skin color. But that's what they were born with, and you wear it, and you represent. So people represent their race, they represent their ethnicity, they represent, like Joel Osteen said, you represent Christianity. No matter what you say, you're representing. Like this guy tailgating me. You're representing people from the Chicagoland area. And every day I come down, you show what pieces of freaking garbage you are. What filth, what disgust, what disgrace you are. What trash you are. What a city of unethical, low-life, scumbag pieces of shit. That's what you show through your actions. What you reap is what you sow. And so people look. And they do these things like Sid. He grew up and he's an ethnic group. And I forget what ethnic group he is. But he doesn't do business with his own people. Why? Because his own people, out of his words, he did business with them numerous times and they screwed him over. His own ethnic group, trying to do business, trying to do things ethically, and they screwed him over, and he talked, I hate my people. They're a bunch of lying, cheating pieces of garbage. I don't do any business. So people that are my ethnicity, I avoid them for business. I'll hang out and have a drink, but I'll do nothing with them business-wise. They've proven to me that they're unethical scumbags. So I might say hi to them at a bar and be cordial, but that's about it. I hate them. And that's him. So he's doing different. He's ethical in business. He's fighting the good fight against the shitbags in his own ethnicity. I've grown up with Italian Americans and good ones, like the movie with he's a bus driver and so on and so forth. But anyways, he's an Italian guy. And he's raising his son. And he's trying to do the right thing. And he hates the mafiosa. They're Italian. He's Italian. And he thinks they're scumbags, making the Italian people look like shit, making him look like shit. Because people say, oh, you're Italian, huh? You must be one of those scumbag mafia people. Everybody profiles. People profiled their own people, like Jen did. She was very, how do you say, hard on other Asians. She didn't like when they did things that were inappropriate. She used to tell me at church, this one doesn't, donate enough. He's the rich doctor, he drives the Mercedes and everything else, and he comes for all the freebies at church, and he's filthy rich, and he donates nothing to church, and he takes from church and gives nothing back. He's a freeloader on church. And so she used to call him out all the time, like, what a scumbag. What a cheapskate. Here, I go out to dinner with my friend Janice, and there's an individual at the table. Now, he's a Jewish guy. And she goes out with him, and they're good friends. We get along, I get along with him, but I've never, split a tab with him before. And Janice goes, this is what's going to happen. The tab's going to come out. He's the richest guy by far at the table. He's filthy rich. And the tab's going to come out, and he's going to go, let me get it. But he's going to short arm it. He's not going to grab the check and pull it in like people do. They're like, let me get it. They grab the check. They take out the credit card. They hand it to the waiter. He short-armed it. He's like, watch him short-arm it. He'll offer to get it a couple times, but he can't quite reach the check. So the check came out, and he said, let me get it. Let me get it. Now, he didn't have to offer at all. No one was asking him to pick up the check. No one was asking him. Everybody was going to pay their own. We were just in a split the check. And he went, short-armed it. Let me get it. Let me get it. And Janice is like, no, I'll take care of it. And she reaches and grabs the check, puts the credit card out, and pays it. And then she looks at me and I'm like, see? That's what I deal with when I go out with him. He's the filthiest, richest person here, and he's a cheap mother. Now, I tell you he's Jewish. She didn't bring it up. I know him. And he is a stereotypical cheap Jew, making Jewish people look like filth. He didn't even have to offer. All he had to do is pay his own share. But he would do this gesture all the time, and she would laugh on the inside. What an asshole. So understand this and understand films. And they do these things and they show these tendencies in people because they have to build the roles and they show the good and bad on the screen. But it's okay when people are getting along and they're not exposed to it. Meaning it's okay when it happens once in a while and it's irregular. But when it becomes a habit and it's all the time, it blows up. And the movie emphasizes it, and the movie or TV show can cause extreme violence. So that's why we have parental guidance in that. Children, when they see these things, they don't know how to take them in, analyze them, separate them out. And this is why parents are supposed to guide them through and explain to them these actions, those actions, what he did. Do you understand this? Truly, when you watch a movie, going back over it, do you think he did the right thing? Like they have the new show, What Would You Do? Did you do the right thing? And so on. That's setting examples for people on what to do in certain situations. But the thing is, there's backlash when people feel like you're butting into their business. Not everybody appreciates assistance. Sometimes they'd rather not you butt in. So don't think being a hero, jumping in and I'm coming to your aid is going to go positively all the time. Because it's something that people need to work out, and adults work out these issues between themselves, and they rather you not butt in. But sometimes you have to butt in. So the movie should, or the TV show should, have a little caution. Dip your toe in, and you can just ask, are you okay? Is everything going okay? You don't have to assist per se. Ask them. Give them a way out. You'd like to join us at our table. Truly, have the person move over and join you, and the person comes back and they're sitting with you, and now it changes the context of the conversation. Because now they're sitting at your table with you, and the person comes back out of the washroom, and now they're in a group setting, and usually people, are a little bit more tamed when they're with people they don't know. But there's ways to maneuver around it, but don't always think of jumping into it, because sometimes you can put yourself in a bad situation where both parties turn against you. And they don't show that. They only show where it works out, where that party feels like they're saved and thank you for doing the right thing. But I've been there and done it. And you learn that sometimes jumping in, like I told you at the Wildcat House, there was a domestic violence incident, and the husband was truly beating his wife, and then we went and broke it up, and he resisted, and we had to take him to the ground. And as we were struggling with him, she jumped on my manager's back, Bill, and started scratching him and trying to clawing his face and pulling his hair. She didn't bite him. And he had to go backwards and slam her against the wall. He ran backwards into the door, slammed them against this big door. She hit the door hard. He just whammed her into the door. But he, black belt in martial arts and everything, and very adaptive at self-defense. And she was on his back. He needed to get off. Sometimes falling backwards and slamming their head into the ground. If they're on you, fall down and slam your head backwards. Why? Because as you push your head backwards, you push your head into their head, and their head is going to slam into the ground. So sometimes it's good when they jump on your back to fall down, slam them to the ground, and slam your head and elbows and body backwards. That's what he did when he ran her in the door. He also moved his elbows and everything shoulder backwards, slamming her. So as you're falling backwards, you can reach out with your elbows in that and slam their body into the ground. So if you want to get somebody off you that's on you from behind, falling backwards and doing it right is a very good self-defense. They think they're going to get you in a better position maybe, but not really if you use the ground as your friend. and you slam them into the ground. You use the momentum falling to really take it to them and knock the wind out of them. You're on top of their chest. You're on top of their chest, and if you slam them to the ground, you'll knock the wind out of them. Pieces of garbage that don't know how to drive. That's why I believe in tightening up the driver's test. People react to their environment. And I come down here and I get a bunch of freaking garbage. The cities are a shithole for evil people. They get lost in the crowd. They can do lots of disgusting stuff. You don't get people in the burbs tagging cars or tagging this. Why? Because there's not a lot of people around, and if there's any cameras, you stand out. So it's very easy to see, like, oh, that person walked in, that person walked out, that person was the only person in the last 2 hours. Where in the city, you have a lot of traffic, all these people going by and everything. Could it be me? Could it be them? Could it be them? Could it be them? There's a lot of possibilities. But in these areas, not a lot of possibilities. So they like that there's a lot of possibilities. So they like getting lost in the crowd. So they can do lots of bad things. But when the hay is gone, the needle stands out, right? Well, if you want to get lost, you get lost in the crowd. You see it in movies where there's a march and they're getting away from the bad guy and they go into the parade. Or they, go into a busy street so they can get lost in the crowd. So it's safety for bad people. You're just one of millions in a tight pocket. So why do you think Tokyo, Japan is so strict? Truly, and Singapore even stricter in Taiwan because of population density, or Seoul, Korea. They need to be stricter so they don't allow them to get lost in the crowd. They find the needle and eliminate the needle right away, preventing the bad things. In the city, you have to be tougher on crime. The cops here are so easy. They ignore everything. They ignore running stop signs. They ignore running stoplights. They ignore speeding. In the burbs, they don't, or didn't, like in Northfield and all Deerfield and that. If you're speeding or you have a headlight out, you're pulled over immediately. In the city, they don't do anything about it. And so you get lost in the crowd. It's like I go in to take care of my lights and they keep on telling me they can't take care of them. We don't have the bulb and all this bullshit. No, they're just advocating for people driving with their taillights out or driving with their headlights out. They're just making excuses for scumbags. And so they make it difficult on me, where it's not difficult at all. So they're giving excuse to the filth and making the world the worst place. So all these motherfuckers are going to burn in hell. They give excuses to the shitbags. They give the inches that they take miles. While you're in the city, you see somebody jaywalking in Tokyo, they're in jail for 3 months. They take it the opposite way. They know that other people in a crowd, monkey see, monkey do. You jaywalk, many other people are going to jaywalk. So they don't want people to start disobeying the traffic signals. So they whack them. And that's why you get cab drivers and Uber drivers like my friend Pete yelling and screaming at them, obey the laws, do the right thing. Because the police, they don't do shit here. And most of the bad guys are caught by accident in traffic stops. But here, they ignore everything. They shouldn't. They need to be tough on crime. They can't give the inches. Too many people around. Speeding, population density. Somebody going up on North and Wells could drive down the sidewalk really easy. You know, truly. But if you're tight on your vehicle registration and everything else, then you don't get these situations. But they don't look at that, do they? That you have a domestic violence incident. Like outside of Excalibur. There was a fight inside Excalibur. And they let the people out separately. And the one guy, he was crossing at the crosswalk. And the guys were getting the car from the valet. Saw him in front of them crossing the crosswalk. And they hit the gas and hit the guy and killed him. Now again, timing. We learned this in the club. We hold one person and let the other person go. And we hold them for an hour or so. Making sure it's all good. Watching them leave. Making sure they're not around the location. And then we release the other party. We don't release them outside simultaneously. Because if you do, they end up getting back into it again outside the establishment. So you hold one party, you release the other party. You don't want a retaliation. But again, handling things correctly. And Excalibur is liable. I don't know what happened if they did a wrongful death suit against Excalibur. But they could have. They didn't handle it correctly. So this city doesn't handle its people correctly. And we talk about private security. Well, what's private security doing? Truly, harassing me and making my life miserable isn't winning your money with God. You're a bunch of freaking losers. So, the Crowbar, ecstasy. I'm by this Rick's Cabaret right next door is the Crowbar. You know what happened? Oh yeah, a drug dealer selling ecstasy inside. And he happened to sell it to a girl whose father was the state's attorney for Minnesota. She overdosed on ecstasy. The ambulance came, took her away. That was the end of Crowbar. They didn't do it, but they allowed the drugs to be sold on premise. And Crowbar went out of business. They lost their license. And he said, you can pull up the news article and everything else. And the father said he's going to make an example of them. And he went after them. He was the state's attorney for Minnesota. And he contacted the state's attorney for Illinois. And they went after Crowbar. And shut it down. They weren't doing it somebody came in and sold drugs on their premise. But they were held responsible for the situation. They were held responsible for the situation. And they lost their license and that, and I don't know if they got sued. But they didn't do it. These people chose to do it. So the city of Chicago allows people to enter the city of Chicago. You open borders. Why do you think we have customs and immigration? Because the federal government, if they let in illegals, and those illegals kill people, like has happened in California, and truly illegal killing U.S. citizen, the government could be sued in a way for wrongful death. Their job is to secure the borders. And when they let illegals in and the city of Chicago allows illegals to stay, they're derelict in duty, and the federal prosecutor needs to come down and start locking police up, start locking the mayor up, start locking the county board, the governor, putting them in jail, putting charges against them, criminal charges against them, destroying them. Just as Michael Flynn got it for lying for the FBI. The federal prosecutors charged him. And he lost his position, had to step down, and had to deal with the legal charges. It's the same way with sanctuary cities. As the Constitution says, you must follow the law. The mayor doesn't get the choice to ignore the law. He goes to jail. So they should lock up the Chicago police. And I would charge them with this crimes. And I don't know how many people Jeffrey Dahmer took from Chicago, because he used to hang out in Boys Town. It's well documented. Not only in Milwaukee, he used to come down to Boys Town by Wrigley Field to pick up people. So I don't know how many of his victims, if any, came from Boys Town, but he sure hung out down there, and he sure picked up males down there. So I don't know how many of them, but that's somebody coming into your state across the border, not a resident. But your police are held accountable. The Chicago police are accountable to hold people in Chicago to prevent bad things from happening to them. That's why they're here, the citizens of Chicago, but also from preventing the citizens of Chicago not to hurt tourists. So it's a double mandate. They protect their citizens, and they protect tourists that have the legal right to be here. They protect them from hurting each other. That's why they're peacekeepers. So you have this derelict of duty going on, like ignoring the homeless, allowing them to loiter in vagrancy and that. If I was prosecutor, I would be locking up people, starting with the mayor and then going down and locking up the aldermen. And I would move down the food chain. I would lock up from the top all the way to the bottom. I would charge everybody in the chain. So I would go down to the precincts and charge the beat cops. And I would hand them their indictment, their criminal indictment. Here you go, officer. We're indicting you. And I would hand them their criminal indictment for derelict of duty. And, oh yeah, that's a criminal charge that government officials, public servants can be charged with. and I would be indicting them all. And I would be looking to lock them up and destroy their career. Hold it. You've taken away my career many of times and destroyed it. So what do I care if you lock up and destroy the mayor's career? Screw him. Take away the cop. Take away the badge. Screw them. No big deal for you to do it to me. Unbelievable amount of times. So why do I care if you destroy them, lock them up, and beat the shit out of them in prison? It would only seem just to me, from your standpoint, God, watch what you did with me through my life. So why should they suffer any less? Because it doesn't seem right, but you stand up for them and you protect them. And everyone I see out protecting them, I think is a scumbag piece of immoral garbage. And the Chicago cops need to all go to jail. I would be indicting every single cop, every politician for derelict of duty, for protecting any illegal. Go to the Constitution. The Supreme Court would easily upheld it. It says it clear as day. They must enforce it. That's why we have the Bill of Rights. And you have the right to remain silent and so on and so forth. They have to follow these protocols. They don't have a choice. And if you can't follow the protocols, you should have never took the job. Like lawyers, they can't lie. They can't represent somebody as innocent who is guilty. They swear an oath. And truly, they're disbarred, like President Clinton was disbarred. And he wasn't even doing legal things. He lied on the stand. He wasn't even representing anyone. He was getting prosecuted, but he lied in his prosecution. And lying in the prosecution, as a lawyer, you're on the stand. You can't lie. And when you lie, they strip you of your legal license. So he was disbarred. Sitting president. He was the president of the United States, and the Bar Association took away his license. They didn't say, oh, Mr. President, you're doing an illegal action and we're going to turn a blind eye. The Bar Association said, I'm sorry, you violated the ethics code and now you are disbarred. So a standing U.S. president was disbarred, his legal license taken away. And rightfully so. And that should scare the shit out of all the lawyers who do wrongful things. I don't give a shit about their career. Destroy them. They deserve it. So these Uber drivers and Lyft drivers ripped their license away, as they fired me from Uber and Lyft and Via. So yank it away in a heartbeat. Somebody accosts me and threatens my life continuously, and Uber takes away my ability, and these motherfuckers go around violating every traffic, violating everything? Yank their license now. Pieces of scum. Revelations is here. Only the good stand. The wicked go down. So they should be snatching it in a heartbeat. Putting them under. Kick them out of the university. Ban them from the college. Truly. Screw them. And you can never, ever go to college in the United States. And they have reciprocity through the international, the universities. There's an international. And so you get barred from going to a university anywhere in the world. So having teeth, don't think you can get out of it. I'm just going to go to a university in Mexico. Well, then it has no power. They just go around you and end around, and the punishment is nothing. But if you have the United Nations standing behind it, and you do it here, and it follows you everywhere, then it has power. So you can't do these things like OJ was running to Mexico. And they're fleeing to another country to get away with it. What do terrorists do? They flee. What did we see in Vietnam? They went into Laos and Cambodia, leaving Vietnam so they can get safe haven. That's what they did. Also, the North Koreans did. They cross over into China. And we wouldn't cross over into China with our aviators. And they would cross over and get protected, build up behind the Chinese lines, and come back and surge again. That's what they constantly did in Vietnam. They go back into Laos, Cambodia, regroup, rearm, and then come back in again. So what did we do with the war on terror in Afghanistan? We told the president of Pakistan made a deal that our troops, when they're in pursuit of any terrorist, that they are allowed to cross over into Pakistani territory. Just because they crossed the border, and what did the Pakistani president and people in his party didn't like it, but what did he say? U.S. troops are allowed to pursue across the border into Pakistan. So if they're in pursuit of any terrorist and they cross from Afghanistan into Pakistan, the U.S. soldiers are allowed to cross into Pakistan and continue to pursue them throughout Pakistan. So we cut a deal, and he wasn't hot water with his party because they were Muslim. They weren't good Muslims, and they were terrorist Muslims, but people in his own party were upset. But he still did it, and it did put his life at jeopardy, as I showed you all those terrorist actions in Pakistani, where the terrorists went into a military school in Pakistan. All these, people that put their sons and daughters, mostly, I think all sons, in a military school, and the terrorists went into the military school in Pakistan and killed, 100 and something of them, to strike back at the Pakistani military for working with the United States. Oh, do you know that's why they went into the school? Because they were upset at the global cooperation. So they were striking back, trying to put fear in their government to break the bond between the United States and Pakistan related to chasing terrorists across borders. So if you're a Chicago cop and you're pursuing somebody and they leave the city of Chicago, you can go in and pursue them across borders in the Park Ridge or wherever, as long as you're in pursuit. Jurisdiction doesn't matter then. And you can ask for assistance from the Park Ridge police, as an example, but you can continue to pursue them. You don't have to pull off. So again, also, things move more orderly when people follow the rules. You don't get traffic jams. So, things like people getting hit, drunken people staggering into the street and getting hit. When they wait for the light and it's in tune to them, even when they're drunk, they wait at the crosswalk in Japan. Japanese people can be very heavy drinkers. So are they in Korea. And they installed into them that even if there's no car around, they wait for the walk sign. So even a drunken, stupid idiot won't stumble out into the street and get hit by a car. And yes, you're programming them. But you're programming them to save their life. So even in impaired situations, they make the right decision. And this is what these morons don't understand. And they go out and drink and they get high and they do drugs. How many bad things did I ever do on? Never. Not a single incident. But I can tell you lots of people that did very wicked things. Because if you allow yourself to do wicked things when you're sober and straight, you wire the brain with that exception. And then when you get impaired, it is even easier to do bad things. Oh, yeah. So you wire yourself to allow these things to happen. So you're more likely, when you're impaired, to do very bad things. So when you wire yourself to do good things, even when you're impaired or you're all sexually stimulated, you still won't do bad things. Because you've trained yourself to overcome your urges. But we teach our society, don't ignore the law, do what you want. Well, then when people get impaired, and you watch, and I watch, like me, I've never done anything per se inappropriate, impaired. But they give themselves excuses. Truly. They give themselves excuses. So my track record is never to do any. I've never done anything. I've been entrapped in things, but I've never done anything bad impaired. So they allow themselves to do things. I didn't run lights. I didn't run stop signs. I didn't walk across the street, jaywalking or any of that. Impaired. I didn't rape anyone or do molestations or any of it. And why do you think my ex trusted me more than anyone in the world? And then, to tell you the truth, ask anyone who's ever, I can give you names of old drug dealers, but they left me in their house with their whole stashes. And they didn't worry that I would take an ounce of their stuff. They even gave me the keys to their house. They gave me the keys to go in there and get it myself. And only take what I told them I was going to take. Many different drug dealers gave me the keys to their house and said, go in, here's where my stash is. Take the amount you said you're going to. Come back, tell me how much you took and pay me. No problem. Here's my keys. So tell me, how many drug dealers trust people to go in house with large stashes, go in there, grab what they needed, come back out, give them their keys back, and pay them. Well, all of them trusted me not to rip off anything in their house, not to touch anything, not to do anything inappropriate, even being impaired. It's installing this sense of integrity. And you don't understand. You allow these people to do very bad things when they're sober, when they're drunk. It's a no holds freaking bar thing. So you have to be very, very tight. And if they screw up, you punish them. Don't let them off the hook. Drill into them. Do the right thing or else. What is the scene in American Sniper? What does he say to him? He says, if you make a mistake about this, they're going to fry you. And he says, I know. And so I'm going to, as you saw him call in, do you see this? No, we do not have eyes on them. We allow you to make the judgment call. But he calls up to the superiors. Do you see this with the drone? Do you have eyes on them? No, the convoy can't see them. We can't see them. We allow you to make the decision. And then his partner says, you better be right if you take that shot, because if you're wrong, we get fried. He does too, because he allowed them to take the shot. They both go down. So make no mistake about it. So when you give an inch, they take a mile. That's how your brain works. So if you give yourself latitude, when you're impaired, you'll give yourself even more latitude. So why do you think I never stolen with an employer? And I repented the one time, and it was a test. I'm telling you the absolute truth. Kenny and all of them, so many of them told me, and they were all stealing, and they said, oh, it's great, and you're going to get screwed, and you got to get your own. So I did it once, and I felt sick to my stomach. Sick to my stomach. So even with the HSA, I watch, and I know I have penalties and that, but it's a conscious decision when I make a decision. And I know there's ramifications. You would say it's a hardship withdrawal, which it is a hardship withdrawal. And there's taxes and penalties for hardship withdrawals because you didn't use it for a qualifying expense. But the whole process is understanding this. This is why I never cheated on my taxes. I've never cheated on them. I've underestimated my taxes, not overestimated my taxes. And yes, sometimes it's disheartening when you got nothing. Like last year when I was doing, I'm like, I gotta pay? And I have no money. It comes back negative. I'm like, how the hell am I going to pay this? I don't have a penny. And I still owe a bunch of money? And I don't have frivolous expenses. You would say my gas, because I drive around. Studio 41, kitchen and bath, Pinsler. I wonder how that's going. They got good stuff. But I watch people, there's a boot on a car. What did they do? They deflated, they jacked up the car, deflated the tire, and when they deflated the tire, see, the boot's pressed against the tire, and when you deflate the tire, then you take a little bit of pry to get it over the little lip in the rim, and they slide it right off. See, it goes around to make sure you can't unscrew the tire, but no, they just jack up the car, deflate the tire because the tire is wider than the rim, and the tire shrinks in, and then they just slide the boot right down. And then they leave the boot on the side of the road, they inflate the tire again because the tire's not flat, and they drive the car away. So you think the boot's going to stop them? I know how to get around the boot. So the boot wouldn't cause me any problems if I wanted to, get my car out. So you think it's a flawless system? No, it's not. It's just like the low jack or the thing they put in the steering wheel. What did they do? They brought a diamond tip saw that was battery operated, one of those handheld ones they use, and they just cut it in half. And once they cut it, well, then they just took it right off. They cut it in half, and that little bar didn't work. And then they made it out of another metal. They made it out of another metal to stop the cutting. And they just got a better saw blade. And they just cut through it again. So what happened to all those little anti-theft bars that they put in? And people already had car alarms. And they had that little thing to lock the wheel. Well, everybody stopped buying them because people were just cutting them. And then they didn't cut them, they would cut the steering wheel. So if they couldn't cut that, then they just cut the steering wheel. And so, with the little saw, it takes seconds, and they're right through the steering wheel, and they take it off and set it down. So they cut the steering wheel. So people stop buying them. It's like I bought the kryptonite locks for my bicycle. They use Freon and a hammer. They would freeze the lock. You can do this at any lock. You use Freon, you freeze the lock, and then you take a hammer and you whack it hard, and the lock shatters. And that's what they were doing for the kryptonite locks on the bike. They stole multiple of my bikes. They caught a semi-truck leaving Arizona, going into, I think, New Mexico or something, and they inspected the semi-truck. Got pulled over by the state police, and they opened up the trailer, and there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stolen bikes. They were shipping them to other states. They were stealing them all around Tucson. They had a bike theft ring. You think car theft? They had a bike theft ring. They were stealing thousands of bicycles. They steal a bunch per day. And then they aggregate them together, and they put them in the semi and ship them out of state. Just like tow trucks can steal motorcycles. The flatbed, they just pick it up and put it on a flatbed. They've stole Bobcats the same way. They pull them up with the chain. Now they have those little rollers that go around the wheel, and they put this roller on the right and left of the wheel, like they did my car, and then you can just roll the car away. It's not on your wheels, it's on their wheels. But they steal all kinds of things. Generators with flatbeds. They go to construction sites and the flatbed and they steal the generator. That's why they put them hanging from the crane, which is a good way to protect them, but not the safest way if there's heavy winds and everything. But again, they're thinking the generators on construction sites, they steal them all the time. So they break in and they steal all the equipment on the construction site. What did they do in Puerto Rico? A missionary from my church, a group, all the construction supplies were put at a site and they were going to build all these homes, right? And when they got there, what happened? The criminals broke into the construction site and they stole all the drywall, all the wood, all the material. And they had to rebuy from local vendors all the material. They robbed the missionaries. They stole everything. So they get there and like, so where's all the building supplies? Well, we've been robbed. So they were going to take care of the poor and build housing, and they stole everything. They didn't care. They didn't care about those people that were going to get better housing and better conditions. They didn't give a shit. It was an easy target. Why do you think missionaries get kidnapped so much? In the Middle East and other places, like the Korean missionaries, since I'm looking at an Asian guy, they're an easy target. They don't have guns. They don't have any protective gear. They don't have combat training. None of them have martial arts or any type of self-protection training. And so they're easy. Like the one girl who was kidnapped and was eventually killed by friendly fire. They tried to rescue her a couple times. She was a missionary. But she was in the Middle East, white girl going there. She was teaching literacy and that. And she got taken by ISIS. But missionaries are easy targets. Charity workers are very easy targets. In Somalia, they targeted them. Their convoys and capturing them. They can use them for ransom. They use all the charitable goods and they sell them in the black market. They take all the food subsidies and use them to feed their own, militias, and they do. And they controlled the rations and they hold the people hostage. They use the food subsidies against them that controlled the people. So that's why I said the U.S. military has to work with the charities. The charities in the U.S. military or the UN has to have troops that go with the charitable workers. They can't go without military escort. They need to be protected. We have 80 countries, 750 military bases, 11 military fleets. And then we have all our European partners, the German military and all the other militaries. And so they can just move with the aid workers, protecting them. They just give them a contingency. Truly, they give them boots on the ground that moves with them. And then they can have rapid response teams that can further be deployed rapidly if they need assistance. So, like going into Puerto Rico, they need to be having armed escort. When we were in Atibabo, we had one person, he was assigned to us. He didn't go everywhere, but where we slept, he was an armed guard. He had a rifle. And he was there to protect us while we slept. During the day, nothing's going to happen because we're with all the church people and everything. But at night, we had an armed guard. It was just a precaution, but As he said, if anyone comes and they try, I'm going to put a bullet right through their head. And so we slept with an armed guard. As we slept, he was up and he stood watch. It was just a precaution. But Bill Gates goes overseas. And so if you're not using military, then you have to use private security. So Helberg and others have private security, usually ex-military. And they go with you just to make sure. It's not you want anything to happen, but you want to make sure if anything happens, you're protected. You're going to do a good deed. You're going to help them. You don't want to end up like Nick Berg on the table and have your head chopped off. He went out there to help them build infrastructure. And he ends up being an easy target. It's a soft target. He had no protection. So he's a soft target. And they look for soft targets. It's easy to just take them. And so they ended up like the Coptic Christians, that just soft targets. And they bring them to the beach, they put them on their knees, and they videotape cutting off all their heads. They were soft targets. They looked for it, like they went into France and they went inside. They went inside of the church. Soft target, just like it happened in what Indian religion? Anyways, in Wisconsin, it was a soft target. So churches can have security at the door. So they can have security, not making it a soft target. There's no reason churches can't have security. And that's why churches can use things like Open Table and other things. And I keep on preaching Open Table, but that's the only software I know it does what it does. And people can pre-register. And if you're not pre-registered, you're not allowed. Even if you're, going there and you've never been to the church before, you're told to go to Open Table and put in your ID and go through the screening, and then you can come to service. So we don't allow walk-ins. Truly, no walk-ins allowed. That's what happened in Wisconsin. It was just a walk-in. Never been there before. And then the nightclub didn't have a metal detector in Florida. He was a regular, but had a gun. They didn't have a metal detector. So now I go by Rick's Cabaret and they wand them down. But I was at nightclubs that had metal detectors. We had right here in Wicker Park on the second floor. And I'll go by Bucktown, but it's not there anymore. And you had to walk through a metal detector to enter the nightclub. You had to take, just like going through the airport, you had to take everything out of your pockets, and you had to go through, and you could be frisked entering the club. But they had a metal detector. And everybody walked through the metal detector. I went into the club. They didn't want people knifing people. Truly, it wasn't only guns. They had knife issues. And so they were doing things there. So I don't understand. Why can't this be regular and doormen be trained better? So why can't they be trained better? Like at Belly's Casino, and it wasn't Belly's, it was Rivers Casino, and one of the guys won a lot of money, and because they don't card people there, they don't, tell them that, that everybody on site is accounted for, and this person won a lot of money, and then he went from Rivers back to Midway Airport where he lived, and he got tailed. He got tailed. When he left the nightclub, these two other guys left at the same time, and when he pulled into his driveway, they pulled in behind him and robbed him and ended up killing him and stealing all his money. They followed him home from the nightclub, the casino, Rivers Casino. Look it up. But I'm telling you these things because you have to take these precautions. And people like to hide and don't want to identify themselves. And we can't be in a society where you move around unknown. You have no right to privacy in public. So, again, I worked at bars and that. You have no right to privacy. I need to see your ID. I have to legitimately identify you, or you can't come in. You have no right to privacy. And if I can't legitimately identify you, you can't come in. And the thing we did wrong is that if we got a counterfeit ID, we should have called the police and had them arrested immediately. Security holds them. A counterfeit ID is a very big offense. And if you catch somebody with a fraudulent ID, you hold them and you call the police and have them arrested immediately. That's the thing we should have done, and we didn't. And as people got taken away by the cops and they saw them for having fraudulent IDs, well, just like if somebody uses a fake credit card, you don't let them walk away. You call the police and have them arrested. The reason is people just walk out. It's just like when I was at T-Mobile. And I was at T-Mobile, and I'm there talking to my friend who worked there, and these kids came in, and all of a sudden I saw the rack, it was shaking. And I'm like, I looked at the rack, and I saw it before, and it wasn't moving, and then it was shaking, and I looked up, and there was something missing. I'm like, those guys just stole this. They cut it off the rack. They brought in scissors, wire cutters. You know those phones with the little cable on it that they had? Now they just lock them down to the table because people would come in with wire cutters, cut the wire, and then stick the phone in their pocket and walk out the door. So they came in with cutters, cut the cable, and it was attached to security, and they cut the cable, stuck it in the pocket, and then I told them, and he said something to them, and then they're like standing outside the door, flicking us off. Yeah, the two kids were flicking us off, saying, fuck you. And they just stole all this stuff, and they're out there flicking us off. And Adam was the guy who was with you. And he's like, they're like, and I'm like, Adam, are you going to call the cops? And he's like, well, we have a do not chase policy, and we're just going to report it to our internal that. I'm like, you're not going to file an institute and give the cops the camera? And these kids, you can identify them. Oh, yeah, that's right. They're not required to have a state ID. Everybody must have a state ID card, even a baby. So their picture goes in the database. And I'm like, no, we're not. They're younger. And happens to be, they were 2 black kids. But it could have been 2 white kids. But the whole point is not the race. It's the action. It can happen in Egypt, and they could be 2 Arab kids. Or it could happen on the North Shore, and it could be 2 white kids. Because primarily white people up there. Like 2 white kids I know did a bunch of credit card fraud when they were in high school. So again, it's the action, what you're trying to stop. It's not the race, it's the action. And so that prevents all races and both genders from doing things illegally. And I got to stop going around in a circle. Maybe I'll go down to Lincoln Park. But anyways, it's about the action, and you want to stop and curtail the action. But the funny thing is, in a society, when you do this and tourists come into, like my friend Mark, he followed the protocol as a tourist in Tokyo. Then he became a resident, but he complied to all their laws in Japan. And he didn't jaywalk. He followed all their rules. He wanted to make friends. He wanted to build relationships. He didn't want to be there speaking and doing things that alienated the Japanese people. He took Japanese when we were in school. He planned this out for way before he went to law school. Do you know this? My friend Mark Long, when he was an undergraduate, he took philosophy and he studied Japanese and he took trips to Japan. Knowing that he was going to go to graduate school, which he was first going to go to the University of Chicago, which I was kind of upset they waitlisted him. And he wasn't in a wait a year. He was an older student. Older people have a sense of urgency. So he wasn't in a wait a year. So his backup was the University of Michigan. He's from Michigan. And so he went to the University of Michigan. And he got his MBA JD. And then he went and applied for, and I don't know, when you're in law school, you know you can do internships in law school. When you're in graduate school, if you're not already working for an employer and they're paying, you can do internships in graduate school. And he ended up working for a large Japanese firm. But he already planned out who he is going to work for in undergraduate. And he carried it through to graduate school and did further language training and cultural training. Oh, yes, cultural training. He wanted to know how they go about eating Japanese food, how they go about, what do they dress like, what do they talk about, and so on and so forth. Because he's going to be interviewing and he wants to say the right things in an interview. When they ask you questions in an interview and you don't know the culture, like you're going to go to work for Google, it's not only the position, you have to understand the culture of the firm. So when they ask you, they're going to look for chemistry. Not only do you have the skill base, but are you going to be a good team player? Are you going to fit into the chemistry? It's very much critical for firms, especially at high levels, that their teams don't have conflicts within them. They do not want their teams to have conflicts. So they rather turn you away, find somebody else who's a better fit. So you have to understand, and working for them, you have to live in that culture. And if you can't, like Chicago, or New York City, or Los Angeles, or the University of Arizona, do you know I did a study on schools and campuses before I made choices to see about the culture? Truly, I learned. I did studies. I ended up at Benedictine, my first college, and it didn't work out. And I did look at University of Colorado and others, and I looked at their culture. But when I decided to go to the University of Arizona, I did a deeper dive in visiting the campus. When you visit a campus, even in the summertime, sit in on classes. Ask to sit in on classes. Truly, get an idea. If you're an undergraduate, you're going to do general ed. Okay, sit in on some of the general ed classes. See what the students dress like. See how they act in the hallway. Like for a high school or elementary, you're a parent and you're thinking about moving to a certain area. Well, if you have kids or planning to have kids, don't make your nest yet. Figure out what's your elementary school, what's your junior high, what's your high school. Truly, if you're planning to stay there for longer term, do visits. Don't end up on the back end, and realtors don't do this, but I would take you to the elementary school that was assigned. If you're going to go to a private school, you think of private schools, then I would show you some of the private schools, and then we would do a school visit. We go to the elementary school, we go to the junior high, we go to the high school, and then we would ask to sit into some classes if we could. And I would watch the kids in the hallway. Now, it's going to be different as your kids grow up. Things are going to change, and you have to revisit when you're in elementary school. Revisit the junior high. Revisit the high school. So you as a parent can stay on trend. So you've done your competitive intelligence. Your intelligence. You have to do the footwork for them. And so, you know, going in, okay, before they go to junior high, say they're in 8th grade, truly, then go and visit the junior high. Truly, as parent, go visit the junior high. See what they're wearing, what the haircuts are like. Ask the teachers, talk to them. What did the kids talk about? What's hot? What's trending? What do they like to do? It's the next step. And then you can start socializing your child. And it's the same thing. So I did a lot of study on the University of Arizona. I looked at their student body. How many of their students commute compared to how many of their students are on campus. They have dormitories, they have off-campus housing, but those are not commuter students who live in Tucson and commute home and commute to school. Those are commuter students. And so how many are out-of-state students? And then I looked at what states they're from. Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, big recruiting grounds for them. And then I looked what subcategories of states. And then I looked at, okay, what do people wear? How do people look? You know, you got to figure out, like moving to the city of Chicago, if you're going to fit in. So you have to do a due diligence, like, oh, I'm going to take a job in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Well, where do the expats hang out? My friend had to find all this before he went. He speaks Arab, but he did some due diligence. Where do the expats live? Where do they go out? What restaurants do they go to? Where is a bar for expats? Because Saudi Arabian citizens aren't allowed to drink, but expats, they have a bar. Some places they don't have an exception, but in Riyadh, they had an exception. So he was in a know what he's going to do, what his life is going to be like outside of work, and then in work. What do they dress? What's the attire? Do they allow beards? Do they allow mustaches? Do they allow longer hair? Is longer hair inappropriate? What's the haircuts? Truly. How do people interact? What do they talk about? Hey, Stan, did you watch the cricket game today? You want to do your education so you understand. So don't move to a city and people move there and they don't understand the population. They're like, I'm going to New York and I'm going to make it. Well, how do you know that you fit within New York? And then that's the greater New York, but I'm going to move to Yonkers as they're in the billions. Okay, if I'm going to live and work in Yonkers, okay, what are the people like? What is the food like? What choices do I have? What are the residents, the rental properties look like? And if I want to buy, what types of houses or condos and that are available, or townhomes? Do they have townhomes? Some places there's no townhomes. You like townhomes. Maybe there's only condominiums. Maybe that area only allows rentals and you can't own. Very rarely does anything go up for sale, like in Rosemont. There's where almost never does a house go up for sale in Rosemont. Almost never does a house in Rosemont go up for sale. So there's not a lot of listings. People don't sell their properties. It's very few houses are available. So you think, I'm going to move there and I'm going to buy, but maybe people there's very low inventory ever available. And it's a big bidding war when they come available. So you're trying to do these things to educate yourself so you don't just stick yourself into a situation and it doesn't work out. There's a culture clash. You don't fit with them. They don't fit with you. And so when you go for an interview, you have to figure out, and you want to meet the people and talk to the people of the firm. Truly, if they're considering you moving forward, you want to do some due diligence and say, hey, I want to talk to a few people and meet a few people at your firm. Is that okay? And they'll be like, well, why do you want... I just want to see, what they're like. I want to see, get a feel for the firm, making sure that, I'm right for the firm. I fit within the culture. And so, can I, walk around and see the place? And can I, spend some time with some of the employees? Informally, not formally. Not with them, oh, this is John, how you doing? No. Can I go around and just introduce myself to a few employees? And I'm Mike, thinking about working for, Subway. And it's good to meet you. How long have you been here? And so on. Where are you from? And blank, blank. Truly. And see if you fit in. Talk to a few people. See how welcoming they are. Or how cold-shouldered they are. If they're more standoffish. Some places, people are a little bit more standoffish. Other places, you'll fit in. Do they embrace the new guy easily? Or are they going to be a little bit distanced from you? And like they did in Vietnam and that, what did they say? Don't get to know the new guy. The new guy has to get through the first 100 days, per se. And if they make it that far, then learn the new guy's name and everything. But they don't invest in you until you can make it through, because what happens? They get devastated. Here today, gone tomorrow, and the troops can't take it. So to protect themselves from mental tragedy, they're not being assholes, and you see it in the movie, and you're like, what cold, distant mother peckers? No, not at all. You're going to be injured, and you're not going to be here, or you're going to die, and you're not going to be with us, and I don't want to get emotionally attached to you. So not until you make it through a certain amount of time, and it proves that you have the survival instincts, and that's what they're looking for. You have the survival instincts. You make the right decisions when the shit hits the fan, that you're going to be here tomorrow. Then they're like, what's your name? And they open up, and the hard shell becomes soft. And everybody says with me, it's the same way. I had a hard candy outside and all mushy on the inside, which makes me very vulnerable once you pass my shell. And that's what I told Jen. Once I get attached to you and commit to you, I lock in. And if you abandon me, and she said, I'll never leave you. I'll never abandon you. I'm in this for the rest of my life. And she said, I assure you, I've never broken a promise. I don't break commitments. I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to abandon you. And I told her I had abandonment issues. But if I cross over and we're in this together, we're in this together. And you can never leave me. As I will never abandon you, you will never abandon me. And who has abandonment issues? God. Read the Old Testament, and this is where it makes me sick, but all the different stories. We're there. We love you, God. We love you. We love you. And then what happens? In Exodus and many others, they abandon God. They make the golden calf and they worship. But there's another one where they make another statue. I can give you many of those stories. But they abandon God and they turn their back on God. God has abandonment issues. Abandonment issues. Oh Lord, why have you forsaken me? Jesus said on the cross. He felt abandoned. He wasn't. But even Jesus, abandonment issues. So Jesus has abandonment issues. But you don't read into the statement, but take it to any psychologist that's worth their salt, and they're telling you Jesus has abandonment issues. Oh Lord, why have you forsaken me? He feels abandoned. He's dying and he feels naked and abandoned. And so he takes that feeling to the grave. He wants loyalty. He wants faith. He is not kind to people that abandon him. That you commit to him, he commits to you. We call quantum entanglement. Committing to each other. Entangling. And once bonded, and this is the point of two becoming one in the Bible, male and female. You're entangling each other on a particle basis. You're becoming quantum entangled, husband and wife, and they don't study this, but you will. You can be quantum entangled. And I'll look it up right now, but two become one, And the Bible understands that, like the Trinity, the Father, the Son, they're entangled. No matter how far they're apart, they're still together. Nothing can separate them. And that's the premise of quantum entanglement. There is no distance. Nothing can break the bond. Nothing can break the separation. They're in it forever. And that's what the Bible tells you about. So make no mistake about that. So now you understand Jesus has abandonment issues. And those issues go with him to the grave and go into his decision of whether he's going to let you into heaven or not. And the Bible tells you, the fool, that you're here today and you abandon. I'm telling you, God doesn't like people. God, you're not going to heaven. You're in it today and you're in it tomorrow. Those that waver, they never make it. They're good time Charlies, here with you today, and when God does something to upset you, you're gone tomorrow. Well, you were never meant to be there in the first place. I took the good with the bad. I went through many sufferings, and I only love God and will never abandon God. So, unlike you, he understands me. There is no abandonment. No matter what I go through, my love is eternal for him, and from my understanding, his love for me is eternal. I will never abandon him. I will never fail him. I will never let him down. That's the calling. That's what a priest and pastor and nun, they have to understand that. If you're a true man of God, you understand these things. And you hold yourself to a higher standard. So, anyways, I'm going to cut this here because I have to go to the bathroom. I'll pick up with another video.